My father ran our house like a military base and punished us for every small mistake. When he needed us to show up for his retirement ceremony, we followed his own rule. My father served 26 years in the Army before he retired. He was a sergeant major, which he reminded us of constantly. He believed that discipline was the most important thing in life, and that children needed structure to become respectable adults. What that meant for me and my two younger brothers was a childhood that felt more like boot camp than a home. We woke up at 5:30 every morning, even on weekends. Dad did room inspections before breakfast. If our beds were not made with hospital corners, he would strip the sheets and make us start over. If there was a single item out of place on our desks, he would sweep everything onto the floor and tell us to try again. We were not allowed to cry. Crying was weakness, and weakness was not tolerated in his house. My brother Leo cried once when he was 7 because he fell off his bike and scraped his knee down to the bone. Dad made him stand at attention in the backyard for an hour because soldiers do not cry over minor injuries. Leo needed 4 stitches later that night, but Dad still said he overreacted. We had chores assigned on a rotating schedule posted on the refrigerator. If a chore was not completed to Dad's standards, we lost privileges. Television was a privilege, dessert was a privilege, talking to friends on the phone was a privilege, playing outside was a privilege. Everything good in our lives existed only because Dad allowed it, and he could take it away at any moment for any reason. Mom left when I was 11. She said she could not live like a prisoner in her own home anymore. Dad told us she was weak and that we were better off without her. He said real families did not need people who could not handle discipline. He said we should forget about her because she clearly forgot about us. I did not see my mother again until I was 19 and tracked her down myself. She cried when she saw me. She said leaving us was the hardest thing she ever did, but staying would have killed her. I believed her. School was another battleground. Anything below an A was unacceptable. My brother Danny got a B+ in algebra once, and Dad made him write the entire textbook chapter by hand 5 times over the weekend. Danny was 12. He missed his best friend's birthday party because he was still copying equations at 10 o'clock on Saturday night. Dad said birthdays were distractions, and that Danny should thank him for keeping him focused. We were not allowed to have opinions that disagreed with Dad's opinions. We were not allowed to question his decisions. We were not allowed to say no to anything he asked. Talking back meant push-ups. Arguing meant running laps around the block. Refusing an order meant losing meals. I once went to bed without dinner 3 nights in a row because I said I did not want to join the junior ROTC program at school. Dad said I was ungrateful and that he was trying to give me a future. I joined the program. I hated every second of it. All 3 of us moved out the moment we turned 18. I left for college across the country. Leo joined the Merchant Marines just to be on a ship far away from land. Danny moved to Portland and became a guitar teacher, which Dad called a waste of potential. We rarely came home. When we did, Dad would criticize everything about our lives. He said my apartment was too messy. He said Leo's beard was unprofessional. He said Danny's career was embarrassing. Nothing we did was ever good enough. Then last year, Dad announced he was receiving a special recognition at his old base. 30 years of service, including his reserve time. There was going to be a ceremony with his former commanding officers and fellow veterans. He expected all 3 of us to attend in formal attire. He sent us an email with the date and time and a list of rules for how we should behave. He said we needed to arrive exactly 15 minutes early. He said we should not speak unless spoken to. He said we should refer to him as Sergeant Major in front of his colleagues. He said this was his moment and we needed to respect it. I called my brothers that night. I asked them what they wanted to do. Leo said he was not going. Danny said he was not going either. I felt something shift in my chest when they said that. I realized I did not want to go either. I realized I had spent my whole life following Dad's orders because I was afraid of what would happen if I did not. But I was 32 years old now. I had my own apartment and my own job and my own life. He could not make me run laps anymore. He could not take away my dinner. He could not do anything to me that I did not allow. I sent Dad an email the week before the ceremony. I told him I would not be attending. Leo sent his email the next day. Danny sent his the day after that. None of us gave excuses. Dad always said that excuses were for people who lacked commitment. He said either you show up or you do not, and the reasons do not matter. So we did not give him any reasons. 3 days before the ceremony, I sat in my apartment refreshing my email inbox. I clicked the refresh button. I waited 10 seconds. I clicked it again. The screen showed no new messages. My hands shook when I moved the mouse. I imagined Dad opening his email and seeing 3 separate messages from his sons. I imagined his face going tight the way it did when someone disobeyed an order. I reminded myself that I was 32 years old. I had my own apartment in a different state. I paid my own bills. I made my own choices. Dad could not make me run laps anymore. He could not take away my dinner. He could not do anything to me unless I let him. I refreshed my email again. Still nothing. I got up and walked to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water and drank it standing at the sink. I went back to my computer. I refreshed the email. Nothing. I checked the time on my phone. It was almost midnight. The ceremony was in 3 days. Dad would be expecting us to arrive exactly 15 minutes early. He would be watching the entrance. He would check his watch. We would not be there. I refreshed my email one more time before I forced myself to close the laptop. The morning of the ceremony, I woke up at 5:30. My alarm was not set, but my eyes opened anyway. My body knew the time without being told. 20 years of waking up at 5:30 had trained something deep in my brain. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I did not have anywhere to be. I did not need to make my bed with hospital corners. I did not need to stand for inspection. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and opened the group chat with my brothers. I typed out a message asking if they were awake. Leo responded within 30 seconds saying he was up too. Danny's message came through a minute later. He said he barely slept. He said he kept expecting to hear Dad pounding on his door. He said he knew it was impossible because Dad was across the country, but he still kept listening for footsteps in the hallway. I told them both that we made the right choice. Leo sent back a thumbs up. Danny did not respond. I got out of bed and made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table drinking it slowly. The ceremony would start at 10 in the morning. It was happening right now in a different time zone. Dad would be standing in his dress uniform. His former commanding officers would be shaking his hand. Other veterans would be saluting. The 3 empty chairs where his sons should have been sitting would be obvious to everyone. I poured another cup of coffee. My phone stayed silent. By noon, the ceremony was over. I knew the schedule because Dad had sent it in his original email. Opening remarks at 10. Recognition ceremony at 10:30. Reception at 11:15. It was past noon now. Everything was finished. My phone had not made a single sound all morning. No calls, no texts, no voicemails. The silence felt worse than the angry tirade I had been expecting. I kept picking up my phone to check if I had somehow missed a notification. The screen showed nothing. At 6 in the evening, my phone finally rang. Leo's name appeared on the screen. I answered immediately. He asked if I had heard from Dad. I said no. He said he had not heard anything either. We talked for almost 2 hours. We kept coming back to the same thing. We had actually done it. We had said no to Dad and meant it. We had refused an order and nothing had happened. The world had not ended. We were still alive. We still had our jobs and our apartments and our lives. Leo's voice sounded different from usual. Lighter somehow. He said he felt like he could breathe properly for the first time in years. I knew exactly what he meant. We talked until my phone battery got low. Leo said he would call Danny tomorrow to check in. I said that was a good idea. We hung up. I sat on my couch in the dark for a long time after that. 2 days later, I was eating breakfast when my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. I had not heard it ring. The notification said the call had come in at 6 in the morning while I was still asleep. The voicemail was from Dad. His voice came through the speaker tight and controlled the way it always was when he was angry, but trying not to show it. He said he was disappointed but not surprised. He said his sons had turned out to be quitters who could not honor simple commitments. He said he would remember this the next time any of us needed something from him. No. He said we had embarrassed him in front of his colleagues and fellow veterans. He said we had shown everyone exactly what kind of men we were. The voicemail ended. I played it again. I listened to every word. I played it a third time. The message was 90 seconds long. 90 seconds to tell us we were failures. I deleted the voicemail. Then I went to my deleted folder and permanently erased it. I did not want to be tempted to listen to it again. Work became difficult. I sat at my desk staring at my computer screen. The spreadsheet in front of me needed to be updated by the end of the day. I had opened it an hour ago and had not typed a single number. My coworker Jasper walked past my desk. He stopped. He came back. He asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. He looked at my screen and then at me. He pulled up a chair and sat down. He said I had been staring at the same blank cell for 20 minutes. I closed the spreadsheet. I told him a short version of what happened. I told him about Dad's military background. I told him about the ceremony. I told him about the 3 emails we sent refusing to attend. Jasper listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked me a question. He asked why I felt guilty for not attending an event where I would be treated like a subordinate instead of a son. I did not have an answer. Jasper said his own father had been controlling in a different way. He said it took him years to realize that feeling guilty was just old programming. He said the guilt did not mean I had done anything wrong. He stood up and went back to his own desk. I stared at the spreadsheet for another 10 minutes before I finally started entering numbers. A week after the ceremony, my phone rang late at night. Danny's name appeared on the screen. I answered and heard him crying. He could barely get the words out at first. He said Dad had shown up at his apartment an hour ago. He said Dad had stood outside his door for 20 minutes demanding they talk. He said Dad kept knocking and calling his name. He said Dad told him to stop being a coward and open the door. Danny had not opened it. He had stood on the other side with his hand pressed against the wood, listening to Dad's voice getting louder. Eventually, Dad had left. Danny said he watched through the peephole until Dad got in his car and drove away. Now Danny was afraid Dad would come back. He asked me what he should do. I told him to call the police if Dad showed up again. I told him he did not have to open his door for anyone. I told him Dad had no right to show up unannounced like that. Danny said he knew all that, but he still felt like he had done something wrong by not opening the door. I stayed on the phone with him for over an hour until he calmed down enough to try sleeping. After we hung up, I lay awake thinking about Dad driving all the way to Portland just to stand outside Danny's apartment and yell. The anxiety started affecting my sleep. I would wake up multiple times each night checking my phone. I started making mistakes at work. I forgot a meeting with my supervisor. I sent an email to the wrong client. I could not focus on anything for more than a few minutes. I looked up therapists in my area. I found one named Layla Knowles who had good reviews and availability. I called her office and scheduled an appointment for the following week. The first session was awkward. I sat in a chair across from her, not knowing where to start. She asked me to describe why I had come in. I told her about the ceremony. I told her about my childhood. I described the room inspections and the chores and the punishments. I explained how Dad ran the house like a military operation. Layla listened and took notes. When I finished, she asked me a question. She asked if I had ever described my childhood as abusive. I said no. I said I had always called it strict or old-fashioned or just how Dad was. She wrote something in her notebook. She said we would talk more about that in future sessions. The hour ended. I scheduled another appointment before I left. Leo's ship docked for shore leave 2 weeks after the ceremony. He called me from a hotel room near the port. He said he had been thinking about getting a land-based job. He said being at sea used to feel like freedom, but now it just felt like running away. He said he was tired of running. He asked me if I thought we had made the right choice refusing the ceremony. I told him I thought we made the only choice we could live with. I asked him what kind of land job he was considering. He said he had some contacts at a shipping company based in Seattle. He said they needed people with his experience to manage logistics. He said it would mean staying in one place instead of constantly traveling. He said he was not sure if he was ready for that. I told him he did not have to decide right away. I told him he had 2 weeks of shore leave to think about it. We talked about Danny and the incident with Dad showing up at his apartment. Leo got quiet. He said he worried Dad would show up at his hotel. I told him Dad did not know where he was staying. Leo said that was probably true, but he still felt nervous. We talked for another hour before his phone battery died. During my third session with Layla, she asked me a different kind of question. She asked what I had lost by not going to the ceremony. I started to say nothing. I started to say I had not lost anything because the relationship with Dad was already broken. Then something shifted in my chest. My eyes started burning. I realized I had lost the fantasy that Dad might someday be proud of me. I had lost the hope that if I just did the right thing or accomplished enough, or proved myself somehow, that Dad would finally see me as good enough. The actual relationship had been gone for years. Dad had been criticizing and controlling and impossible to please for my entire life. But I had still been holding on to this idea that things could change, that there was some version of Dad who could love me the way I needed. That father did not exist. He had never existed. I was crying now. Layla handed me a box of tissues. She said it was okay to grieve for the father I should have had, even while accepting the father I actually got. She said those two things were not contradictory. I used up half the tissue box before the session ended. My mom reached out through email 3 days later. The subject line said, "Checking in." She said she had heard about the ceremony situation through a mutual acquaintance. She did not say who. She said she wanted me to know something about Dad's background. She said Dad's own father had been a career military officer. She said he had treated Dad exactly the same way Dad treated us. She said Dad's childhood had been inspections and punishments and impossible standards. She said Dad had joined the army at 18 to escape his father and then became exactly like him. She said understanding the pattern did not excuse what Dad did to us. She said she was not asking me to forgive him. She said she just thought I should know where it came from. I read the email 3 times. I thought about Dad as a kid standing at attention in his own backyard. I thought about him getting punished for crying or making mistakes. It explained things, but it did not make me feel any better. I wrote back a short response thanking her for telling me. I did not know what else to say. I got to work on Monday and my supervisor told me I would be training the new hire. Her name was Jessica, and she seemed nervous standing by my desk with a notebook already open. I walked her through our database system and watched as she made a small error entering a client code. The number went in the wrong field and I felt my jaw tighten. I opened my mouth to tell her she needed to pay better attention and that mistakes like this were unacceptable. Then I heard Dad's voice coming out of my mouth before I even finished the sentence. I stopped mid-word, and Jessica looked up at me with wide eyes. I took a breath and told her it was fine, that everyone makes mistakes when they're learning a new system. I showed her how to fix it and explained the correct process again. She thanked me, and I felt awkward about being encouraging because it did not come naturally. I had to actively fight against my first instinct, which was to criticize and correct harshly. The rest of the morning, I caught myself 3 more times about to snap at her for minor things. Each time I stopped and chose different words. It felt wrong in my chest, like I was being too soft, but I knew that was Dad talking and not me. The group chat with Leo and Danny had been active for weeks after the ceremony. We checked in daily and sent stupid memes to each other and talked about everything except Dad. Then Danny stopped responding. 3 days went by with nothing. Leo noticed first and asked if Danny was okay. I sent a direct message asking the same thing. On the 4th day, Danny finally replied to the group chat. He said he had been thinking and maybe we should reach out to Dad to smooth things over. He said it felt wrong to leave things like this and that family was important. Leo's response came within seconds. He said Danny was caving and that we had all agreed to stand together. He said if Danny reached out to Dad now, it would make the rest of us look worse. Danny typed back that he was not caving. He just did not want to spend the rest of his life avoiding his father. Leo got angry and said we were supporting each other through this, not just reinforcing our damage. I read their messages going back and forth and felt my stomach twist. Danny said maybe the support we needed was permission to make our own choices, including choosing to try again with Dad. Leo said that was bullshit, and that Danny was scared of being the bad son. The argument went on for another hour. I finally typed that we each had to do what felt right for us, and that there was no wrong answer. Neither of them responded after that. The chat stayed silent for 2 more days. 6 weeks after the ceremony, I came home from work and found a letter in my mailbox. The return address was Dad's. My hands shook as I opened it, standing right there in the building lobby. Inside was a newspaper clipping with no note. The article was about the retirement ceremony, with a photo of Dad in his dress uniform shaking hands with his former commanding officer. The headline said something about honoring 30 years of dedicated service. I stared at the photo, trying to figure out what Dad wanted me to feel. Was this supposed to make me guilty for missing it? Was he showing me what I had thrown away? Was he trying to prove the ceremony happened without us? And he did fine. I could not tell. There was no message written anywhere on the clipping or in the envelope. Just the article and the photo. I took it upstairs to my apartment and put it on my kitchen counter. I looked at it 5 more times that night, trying to decode what it meant. Dad never did anything without purpose. Every action had a lesson or a point, but this felt different. This felt like he did not know what to say, so he sent proof of the event instead. I texted Leo and Danny about it. Leo said it was a guilt trip. Danny said maybe Dad just wanted us to see it. I said I had no idea what it was supposed to mean. My next therapy session with Layla happened 3 days later. I brought the newspaper clipping with me and showed it to her. She looked at it and asked what I thought it meant. I said I had been trying to figure that out since it arrived. She asked what Dad was like with expressing emotions. I said he did not express emotions. He gave orders and criticized and stayed silent when he was angry. Layla nodded and said that made sense. She said some people, especially those with military backgrounds, learn to suppress emotional expression because vulnerability is seen as weakness. She said everything Dad feels probably comes out sideways as control or criticism or silence, because he never learned healthy ways to communicate feelings. She said the clipping might be the only way he knows how to say he wished we had been there. Or maybe it was his way of saying he was hurt. Or maybe he genuinely did not know what to say, so he sent the article instead of words. She asked if I could have compassion for how damaged Dad was while still keeping boundaries to protect myself. I said those 2 things seemed like opposites. She said they were not opposites at all. She said I could understand that Dad's childhood made him into this person and feel sad about that while also refusing to let him treat me badly. She said compassion did not mean acceptance, and boundaries did not mean hate. I sat with that for a while. It felt true, but also really hard. I spent the next 3 days writing an email to Dad. I wrote 7 different versions and deleted all of them. Finally, I settled on something short. I told him I was not willing to have a relationship where I was treated as a subordinate instead of a son. I said I understood his background and why he parented the way he did, but that understanding did not make it okay. I said if he was interested in building something different, I was open to that. I said it would require him to see me as an equal and respect my choices even when he disagreed with them. I read it to Layla in our next session. She said it was clear and honest and fair. She asked what I expected his response to be. I said he would probably get angry and tell me I was being disrespectful, or he might not respond at all. She asked if I was prepared for that. I said yes. I sent the email that night at 10:15. I did not sleep well. Dad's reply came at 6 the next morning. I was still in bed when my phone buzzed. The email was short. He said I was being disrespectful and making excuses for my weakness. He said real men did not need therapy to handle their responsibilities. He said I was trying to blame him for my own failures and that he had done his best to raise me right. He said if I wanted to throw away my family over nothing that was my choice, but I should not expect him to apologize for teaching me discipline. I read it twice sitting up in bed. I felt sad but not surprised. Some part of me had been hoping he would say something different, that he would acknowledge even a little bit that things had been hard. But he did not. He doubled down exactly like I knew he would. I realized I had been hoping for change while not actually expecting it. The hope hurt more than the email itself. 3 months after the ceremony, Leo called me with news. He said he had taken a job with a shipping company based in Seattle. He would still be on ships, but the routes were shorter, and he would be home more often. He said being on the same coast as Danny felt important. I asked if they had been talking more. He said they met up twice in the last month, and it helped. He said Danny was figuring out his own relationship with Dad, and Leo was trying to support that even though it was hard. He said the visits with Danny were helping him figure out who he was outside of Dad's shadow and outside of just running away all the time. He said he had spent 15 years on ships avoiding everything, and maybe it was time to actually deal with it. I told him I was proud of him. He laughed and said that was weird to hear. I said I meant it. We talked for another hour about his new job and what Seattle was like, and whether he would actually buy furniture for his apartment or keep living like he might leave any day. My supervisor called me into her office on a Thursday afternoon. She said the company was restructuring and I was promoted to team lead. It came with a small raise and I would be managing 4 people. I accepted immediately. My first day in the new role, I met with my team and told them I wanted to create a supportive environment where people felt comfortable asking questions and making mistakes. One of my team members was an older woman named Olivia, who had been with the company for 12 years. She came to my desk at the end of the day and told me I was the best manager she had ever had. I felt genuinely proud of myself for the first time in months. I was breaking the cycle. I was choosing to be different from Dad. It mattered. 4 months after I sent my email to Dad, he sent another message. It was brief. He said he was selling the family house and moving to a smaller place. He said if any of us wanted anything from our childhood rooms, we needed to come get it within the month. Otherwise, he was donating or trashing everything. I called Leo immediately. He said he got the same email. I asked if he wanted to go. He said only if we went together. I called Danny next. He said the same thing. Nuts! We coordinated a day when we could all drive there and make it quick. We decided to treat it like a day trip and agreed we would not be alone with Dad at any point. Leo said he would pick up Danny in Portland and they would meet me at the house. I said I would get there first and keep Dad occupied until they arrived. The visit happened on a Saturday. I pulled up to the house at 9 in the morning, and Dad was already outside putting boxes in his truck. He nodded at me but did not say anything. I went inside and walked upstairs to my old room. It looked exactly the same. The bed was still made with hospital corners. The desk was empty and clean. I opened the closet and found some old books and a box of photos from high school. I packed them quickly. Leo and Danny arrived 20 minutes later. We worked in our separate rooms and barely spoke to Dad. He stayed downstairs or outside most of the time. We loaded our cars with the few things we wanted. As we were getting ready to leave, Dad came out to the driveway. He looked at the 3 of us standing by our cars. He said the house felt too empty anyway. His voice was flat. For just a moment, I saw him as a lonely old man who had driven away everyone who cared about him. It made me sad, but it did not make me want to stay. We said goodbye and drove away. None of us looked back. I started thinking about what Leo said on the phone about wanting to see us more often, and not just when something bad happened. The idea of actually planning to meet up felt strange after spending so many years avoiding anything that looked like family obligations. Danny brought it up first in our group text. He said we should pick a date and actually commit to it instead of always saying we should get together sometime. Leo suggested twice a year, so it felt like a real thing, but not so often that it became a burden. We picked dates 6 months apart, and I put them in my calendar immediately before I could talk myself out of it. Our first official gathering was in March at a cabin rental in the mountains between Seattle and Portland. I drove up on Friday afternoon and Leo was already there unpacking groceries in the kitchen. Danny showed up an hour later with his guitar and a case of beer. We spent that first evening just sitting on the porch talking about work and apartments and normal things that had nothing to do with Dad or the ceremony or any of the heavy stuff we usually ended up discussing. The next day, we hiked up to a lake, and Leo talked about his new job and how weird it felt to sleep in the same bed every night instead of on a ship. Danny told us about a student who was learning faster than anyone he had ever taught and how proud he felt watching her progress. I realized we were actually building something here instead of just surviving together. We were choosing each other. Sunday morning before we packed up to leave, we sat around the cabin table and agreed to make this a real tradition. No matter where we were living or what was happening in our lives, we would show up twice a year. 7 months after the ceremony, I woke up one Saturday and realized I felt okay. Not perfect, but genuinely okay. I had been seeing Layla every other week, and the sessions were helping me understand that I could choose different patterns than the ones Dad taught me. Work was going well, and my team actually seemed to like working for me. I talked to Leo and Danny regularly, and our conversations felt healthy instead of just trauma bonding over shared damage. Dad and I exchanged emails maybe once a month about practical things like his new address or whether I needed anything from storage. The emails were brief and factual. He never apologized, and I stopped expecting him to. It was not the relationship I wished for when I was a kid, but it was the only honest one we could actually have.